Hey guys, it's JMG here with Friendship Files. Now, today with the first episode, it's going to be a little different. Now, this podcast is going to be designed through interviewing a lot of friends, getting a lot of experiences, getting a lot of questions, different inputs on different subjects. Obviously, today though, as you can see, there's not any friends here. I'm just here with my brother. We're kind of getting a couple questions knocked out because, there's a lot that's, especially in the relationship world, that doesn't get answered, gets understood. And I at least wanted to put my input on there, and hopefully this helps. Now, disclaimer, I am not a psychiatrist. I'm not a relationship counselor or anything like that. All I will say is, though, I'm a very harsh person, and I can at least put an honest input in a lot of aspects and at least give you a different view on what I think might make sense. So, to further ado, welcome.
So, hello guys, it's me, Jeremy, Jonathan's brother, and I'm basically going to be the host today. So now, starting off with the first question for Jonathan. So, how do you see dating life now?
So dating life now is something that is very convoluted in a lot of different aspects. So here's the biggest thing that's kind of happening in a lot of relationships. Everybody kind of feels like they are the ones that are the prize. Now here's the thing. In a real relationship, everybody should be the prize. Both people should be the ones feeling love. Both people should be the ones saying, hey, my partner loves me so much. My partner loves me so much. It should never be one more than the other. What I kind of feel like in relationship nowadays is either on the female aspect or on the men aspect, depending on who feels like they have the most power in the relationship, that somebody feels like they're the ones that if that person left them, they don't care about them. And here's the thing. That's the reason why I think a lot of relationships fail, right? A lot of relationships should never, ever be determined on, hey, I can leave you whenever I want. No, it should be like, hey, I wouldn't want to leave you because I love you so much. That's the reason we got into a relationship, that we should say, hey, we are going to be through thick and thin. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. And I want to figure out a way for us to mesh together. Now, obviously, in a lot of relationships, everyone's going to be a little different. Some people are going to be more independent on some aspects. Sometimes some couples want to do everything together. Neither of those is wrong, right? It just depends on kind of how you are as a person, how your relationship is. But you should never, ever, ever really put yourself in a spot where you should be thinking, hey, I'm the one that should be continuing.
So, you said that relationships need to mesh together. So, what are 3 key things in a relationship that are most important?
Well, number one, and this is the biggest thing, trust. If you don't have trust, you don't have anything. If you constantly feel like you have to check where your partner is, if you constantly feel like you have to check and kind of always ask them where they're at, kind of feel like you're restricting them from going different places and everything, if the reason you're doing that is because you don't trust your partner or just because they have done you wrong in the past, you have one or two choices. Either one, you break up with them and you're done. Or two, you get with them and you resolve the issue that is kind of keeping you guys from having that trust and fix that. Because a relationship without trust is not a healthy one. That's when a lot of fight starts. I mean, I have seen friendships. I have seen, my friends specifically have struggles with this. I mean, I have seen different situations where a lot of the times it was earned, if I'm being completely honest. They did their girlfriend or boyfriend wrong in a situation, and it was 100% well deserved. I mean, honestly, in those spots, it's almost easier to just call it quits, because if you guys are going to continue being together, but both of you guys are miserable, never are going to trust each other, then what's really the point, right? Now, if you guys are both willing to say, hey, we're going to be together, I screwed up, it was my fault, right? It was on me, right? I completely take accountability for that. Then you can start working from that. Trust is the biggest thing. Now, what you want to make sure that you aren't in is somebody that mistakes your trust. And then after they mistake your trust, then they don't take accountability for that. If somebody doesn't take accountability for their actions, the biggest thing you're going to run into is just consistent problems. And it might not seem like a big deal because it might start in something as simple as lying as to where they were the day before, if you ask, and it might just be like you were just simply curious. but then they lie about it. And then that turns into a snowball. First, they say they'll be home at 10, and then for some reason, they don't come home at all, right? You were supposed to have a date, and then they reschedule. Small snowball lies like that. And then you personally, that's when you start not trusting them. Hey, they tell me they're going to do this, but they're doing that. And then that it just starts snowballing. And then the person just never gives you a full-on response as to why. You simply get the, oh no, I was busy. Oh my gosh, I had to reschedule. Oh, this came up. Oh, this and that. Well, what happens then? You personally stop trusting them. And if you don't fill that gap now, if you guys don't completely get together and say, hey, we need to fix this, the trust is never going to be there and you guys are together for nothing. Now, the relationships that last are the ones that go through that, but they fix it. They get together. They say, hey, I love you. I want to be with you. I think you're my person. How can I make this happen, right? The second thing that I say relationships cannot fail on, and this can be kind of controversial in some aspects, is really wanting to be with your person, right? I've seen a lot of times relationships where, some men, women, where they almost feel like they don't want to be with their girlfriend or boyfriend. It's kind of strange. You are dating someone to be with them. If you make a lot of excuses not to be with that person, well, why are you with them? And it's the weirdest thing that I've ever seen. Like, I have seen situations where my friend was making excuses on excuses. Obviously, we were part of the boys. We were all hanging out together. It was high school. It was like, hey, and why is it at that point that you want to be with that person? Well, I will never understand that. I get it if, you want to hang out with friends and you've already hanged out with your person once, twice that week. Hey, I get it. You don't have to be staple together. But if you make seeing that person a chore, then that's something that's a red flag that you probably want to consider at least taking a look at. Because if you don't say, hey, I really don't want to see them today, or you make up an excuse, and here's when you know it's almost over. When you start making excuses of why you can't see them, and the excuses are just lies. You weren't going to do anything. You aren't really going to do what you were saying, but you just don't want to see them. You don't feel like seeing them. No, that can happen sometimes. Everybody has their me day. I have some days where I have friends that invite me over, or I've had a girlfriend that tells me, hey, I want to see you today. And I'm like, hey, I just simply don't feel like it. I simply don't have the energy today. It's better to have that approach in some situations. Obviously, a cool little fit lie won't really do much harm in that. But if you're consistently doing that, that is a pattern that you probably should take notice to. And then the third thing is not having a physical attraction to your partner. Now, that might make no sense. Obviously, you are with that person because you had some type of physical attraction. But I have seen it in a lot of situations where you get with somebody a lot of the times because, one, either their personality is amazing, right? So, some situations you see, hey, their personality was so good, you overlook their looks. In some situations, it's the complete opposite. You overlook their personality because their looks were so amazing, right? You gotta see which one of those reasons it is. And if it's perfect, maybe they look amazing and then they have a perfect personality. Gosh, you caught a gem. I haven't found that yet, right? So here's what you gotta figure out. If you are losing your physical attraction for that person and you are only left with your love for their personality, it is only a downfall from there. I personally have encountered that. I had an encounter where I basically was with this person for a decent amount of time, and even though I originally, whenever I first started dating them, I was absolutely in love. I loved how they looked like and everything like that. Just something about it, I don't know if it's just we grew apart or anything like that, we started just kind of drifting apart. I never started seeing them the same. Whenever we were together, I didn't have those butterflies. And if you start losing those butterflies and you don't find a way to, get more creative, and honestly, it's probably on me too, because I didn't find ways to get more creative, and it's kind of honestly talking to those other red flags I talked about. You don't find ways to get creative, you just get together, hey, babe, let's go eat. Hey, let's go do this. Hey, let's go to the movies. But it's just very much like just go action and just happen to be together. But you don't actually enjoy your time together. It's just you feel like it's a chore. That's when I found out I had to end it. And if you're coming into that situation where you're saying, hey, I really don't really have this attraction with this person anymore. I'm really kind of losing the touch for saying, hey, I want to see them now. Oh my gosh, they look so amazing. That's when you really got to say, okay, I got to reevaluate. I really got to do this.
Well, how hard dating sounds now. I mean, isn't it just better to be single, or are relationships really worth it?
I mean, they're worth it. They really are. Being single obviously has a lot of advantages. Like, for example, on a weekend, you're younger, you're in your 20s, be single, right? Enjoy your life. Now, it also depends on your circumstances. If you're a college student, right? If you are constantly at school, and the last thing you really want to think about is, taking care of somebody depending on your personality. Because again, this is so individual based. So many people feel like they have to have a relationship in order to be happy. And I mean, think about it this might be you. Sometimes you think that, hey, if I don't get in a relationship, you just broke up with your girlfriend or boyfriend, and if I don't get in a relationship in the next 3-4 months, I'm going to feel alone. Some people need that connection in order to feel whole. Honestly speaking, if you don't have that feeling within yourself, if you don't have that feeling saying, hey, I'm happy by myself, I don't need anybody else, somebody else is just going to help make me happier, then being in a relationship just might continue being a circle for you. You'll be with somebody until they stop filling that void, or until you find an excuse as why they no longer work. That might be you. And then you restart over and over again until you ultimately either one, find happiness in yourself and say, hey, I'm worth it. This is what makes me happy. And these are my standards. Don't lower your standards for anybody.
Well, how soon is it too soon to tell someone you love them?
It's never too soon, but it's never good to be too early. Here's what I mean by that. Because you don't want to wait and say, I love you to somebody a year and a half in, just because you're too afraid to say, hey, we've only seen each other for this long or anything. That's too crazy long. Now, you also don't want to be the weirdo saying, hey, I love you, literally the day you meet them, or weekend, 2 weeks into knowing them. Like, telling somebody, hey, I love you, you got to really understand what that means. And if you don't truthfully know, like, you got to think of yourself, okay, have you ever had love? Do you know what love is? And how do you see it in yourself? How does being with this person make sense to me? And okay, now that I am in love, well, what does this make sense to our situation? Is me telling you that I'm in love with you going to change it? Is it going to make it worse, or is it going to make it better? A lot of the times, and this happens a lot I'd kind of say it's 50-50 with men and women. I feel like women are more apt to be a little bit more restrictive with that word, and honestly, so can men. So this is really just kind of a per situation basis. But for men to say I love you, it's normally a little bit harder. The reason why is we have a lot of stereotypes. I mean, men, we're supposed to be the hard ones. Men, we're supposed to be the ones that, we take care of you. Men, we're supposed to be this. So whenever we break our barriers and say, hey, I love you, just for you to say either I love you back or no, it takes a lot of courage for a man to say that. So typically when a man says, hey, I love you, a lot of the times it's closer to the truth. Here is what I've seen from other situations. Women are a little bit more apt to say it a little bit faster, right? Women are typically more articulate. They like to be more desired. They like to have more of a physical touch, right? So women tend to take it a little bit further and tend to say it a little bit faster if that's closer to their personality. But what I will say from that is, again, it struggles from both. If you say it too early, you're going to struggle with one of three things. Either one, you're going to absolutely lose interest. You're going to get ghosted. You're going to be done. Two, that person you said I love you to might just feel like you're weird, and you might have pushed that relationship way too fast before it should have ever gone in that direction. Or three, you didn't actually love them and you just thought it was a cool word to say, and now that other person is thinking, hey, do I actually love this person after they've known you for a week? Don't say that. Wait a little bit longer. Wait until you guys are in the right situation. I typically would say, obviously wait until you're dating, because saying I love you to just somebody that's technically your friend or like a situationship, come on, come on.
So, what's your best advice for someone navigating a breakup?
I think that whenever you're navigating a breakup, the biggest thing that you can do in order to be happier, in order for you to say, okay, this is how I feel more comfortable, is really, like I kind of was talking about earlier, find time to get stuff for yourself. Find more excitement for yourself. Find what you love the most and do it over, over, and over again. 2, find success. Find something that you feel successful in, because a breakup, a lot of the times, especially if you weren't the one that initiated it, if you were the one broken up with, it kind of feels like you failed. And a lot of the times you feel like you have to go running back to them or something like that. Don't do that, right? If they let you go and it wasn't because you did something wrong, then let it go. Don't be the one chasing. It never works, right? And the times that you do get back together, what happens? 6 months down the line, 3 months down the line, a year down the line, same thing happens over and over again. Don't do it. Now, if you did something wrong or you guys just grew apart because you were in different points in your lives or something, I get that, right? I understand that. Being in different points of your lives is normally one of the saddest ways to break up with somebody, because they might be the person that works for you, but you might have not been ready, or they might have not been ready. And with, it not convoluting and not being ready for each other, you might miss each other. That's where you kind of lose your soulmate. And I'll talk about that whenever I invite a couple friends over and kind of have some of those conversations. But I will just say, just keep that together. Try to learn some skills for yourself. Make yourself happy. Get successful in your career. Find what you love the most and do it again.
Is it okay to stay in a relationship if you're no longer in love with that person?
No, I mean, I kind of feel like I fell through that myself, where I started feeling out of love and I started just seeing the person as an object. And then to make it even worse, I started feeling like I wasn't attracted to them anymore, right? Because a lot of what I feel some relationships are is you get with somebody because of the spirit of the chase, right? You're like, hey, I really wanted to be with you. And you almost wanted to prove it to yourself, hey, I can be with that person. But the problem becomes where if you can't realistically see yourself falling in love with that person, if you see that person putting all this effort and time in, and you've tried, but now it's been a year, now it's been 8 months, now it's been 6 months, and you still feel nothing for that person other than, they are just cool to be around, and you would hate to not be with them, but it's not like you would really care. You could move on immediately. No, I'm not saying it's bad that you can move on quick, but it is bad if you can't find a way that saying, hey, not being with this person would hurt a lot more than just saying, hey, one day, right? If you can say, hey, I can stop being with this person and then tomorrow I'm fine, I'll find somebody else and not care, then you should definitely give that person that you say that you care for at least the objectivity to tell them, hey, this might not work. And then in those situations, you might explore something different with them. Maybe they are kind of feeling the same way. Maybe you guys decide, hey, this relationship might not work, but we might have a different arrangement, things like that. But if you're no longer in love with them, and especially if you feel like the other person is, please tell them. It's just the cruelest thing you can do.
Is it ever acceptable to cheat on your partner?
Oh my gosh. No, it's not. There's situations where it might happen, but it's never acceptable. Now, you can always use the excuses of saying, hey, I was drunk, hey, I was this, hey, I was that. If we're all being honest, if you're drunk, what are you doing? You're just doing this stuff that you thought about. You just didn't have the courage. We all just get drunk. To push our personalities, our rhythms, everything, get past the human level of carelessness, because we just want to not care. That's what drunk does to you. I mean, whenever I drink, I'm like, hey, I just want to release. I want to feel relaxed. I don't want to think about society, when you cheat, and even though you're drunk, or even though it's even worse if you're not. If you just thought about cheating on somebody because the situation was real, and you're like, hey, you definitely you should have not been in that relationship to think of. Or if you're thinking of those thoughts, then end it and then go be with them. Hey, whatever. I would say it's way better for the other person to take the hurt now before you cheated on them than to be the cheater. You don't want to be seen as that. I mean, honestly speaking, if it's to this point where you are with somebody else that you think you might cheat on them with, just end it right there. Send them a text. Say, hey, I'm done. I can't do it. I don't see us together anymore. And then at least not only is your conscience free, you can at least let that person know and understand, hey, we're done. It's better than to, let's say, sleep with this other person and say, hey, I'm sorry, I messed up, I won't do it again, or so on and so forth. Because if we're being honest, if you've done it once, most of the time, 99% of the time, you'll do it again. You just will, right? So you got to really think to yourself, okay, is it worth hurting this person for the joy? I mean, if you guys don't have anything serious, then cool, whatever. It's not cheating. But if you're in a relationship that's been for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, gosh, you're married. I mean, you gotta at least have the consideration for their feelings. You gotta say, hey, let me at least tell them, hey, we're done. And not only is your conscience clear, but you can at least give them the expectations that this is no longer a thing, and they can start crying about it now compared to crying about this no longer being a thing, and then you're with this other person. Just end it.
Do you think couples should have access to each other's phones?
I mean, this kind of goes with the trust then. So I think to a certain extent, yes. Now, for example, let's say here's what I'll say. I don't think it matters one way or another, but I do think to a certain extent, just for the security of one another, I think yes. Let's say, for example, we're at a restaurant and my phone is dead and I need to call somebody, and I ask for your phone and you don't want to give it to me. That seems a little suspicious, right? Because I'm not trying to see anything. I'm just legitimately needing a use. Now, when you guys have access to your phones just for the pure sole purpose of seeing each other's text messages, seeing each other's emails, seeing each other's calls, and all that, because you don't trust each other, again, go back to what I had said earlier. If you don't trust each other, there's no point. You got to, again, start thinking, why is it that I'm with this person? If you don't trust each other, you got to say, okay, why is it that I want to see their phone? Do I think that they're doing something that I wouldn't accept? Do I think they think they're doing something that, even though it might be fine, in their head, they're cheating because they're texting a friend and it might not be anything now. They might just be friends. But in their mind, they're saying, you know what? If I wasn't with my partner, I really would want to be with them. I would be with them. Or even worse, they don't want to be with them. They fantasize about them. Now, we're humans. Thoughts pop into our head. But if you consistently are hiding those facts, and that's the reason you don't want to give that to your partner, then that's one extent. Now, to have access to, hey, I want access to your full phone. I want access to your Snapchats. I want access to your Instagrams, everything, just for the sole purpose of saying, hey, if I'm at home and you're over there, and I can log in and see your messages, that's just weird. That's just absolutely weird. You should never have to have that access and trust in somebody. You should say, hey, I can trust this person more than enough to know that they aren't going to do anything to hurt me. And if you don't have that trust, then again, reevaluate your situation. Reevaluate what makes sense for you guys. Reevaluate what makes sense for you guys to say, hey, I think we should be together or not.
In your eyes, what does a healthy relationship look like?
It just kind of goes down through the big picture again, right? Saying, hey, we're together. We love each other. We have a connection. I feel like we're perfect. And you can really start telling if you really want to marry somebody. In my opinion, you don't ever say it out loud because, again, that's a little bit weird. But you can really start telling you really would want to see a future with that person 6 months in. If 6 months in, you see a lot on how you guys are clicking. 1 year in, you can really, really tell saying, okay, this person really meshes with me. This person really has a lot of my same personalities. Now you've gotten to go through all the holidays with them. Now you see them through Christmas. Now you see them with family. Now you see how they interact with kids. Now you see how they interact with adults. Now you see how they're respectful to other people and everything. And you're like, hey, I can really see this person in my future. Then, I think that's what is going to be the biggest thing.
Now, the final question. Can men and women really just be friends?
100%, 1000%, if you have the right intentions from the first get-go. Here's one of the biggest things. I have a decent amount of female friends that I feel very close to, that I respect to the 10th degree. Now, some men, I feel like, just can't completely separate the two things. Some men completely say, hey, I want a physical relationship, and you know what? They can happen to be my friend. Other men are able to say, hey, I don't really care about the physical side. I just care about the emotional side. And that's what really a friend is. Your emotional person that you can talk to anything about. I mean, the reason why you're friends with a lot of people is saying, hey, think about your guy relationships. Saying, hey, I can hang out with them, talk about anything. And obviously, if you're a straight male, you're not going to want to think about doing anything physical with them. You're not thinking about doing anything else. If you think about, hey, let's go to eat, let's go hang out, things like that, there's no intent behind that. That's how you can really tell if you mentally are ready for that. And again, it just kind of all boils down to, are you happy within yourself? Because a lot of the times, people that can't distinctly separate the two is either one, they just simply don't really care about women, or women don't really care about men, or they get a little bit too emotional too quick. You can't have feelings attached when your whole sole purpose is again friendship. Now, another thing that goes into that, you can't also say, hey, I am your friend now, but then later you mentally have an expectation of saying, hey, because I'm your friend, and you've watched some TV show and saying, hey, you become friends first, and then after that we fall in love. Like, no. If you're going into the expectation that, hey, we're going to be friends, and that person now it becomes your best friend, and you betray them by making them feel uncomfortable because you have further thoughts and feelings with that, that's just not acceptable. 100% men can be friends with girls. I mean, some of my best friendships are with girls because, you just sometimes need a different opinion, a different view of things. As men, we see things one way. Females might see things another way, obviously, right? So getting that different point of view from somebody that is not trying to get with you, somebody that is not trying to say, hey, I just want to do this with an ultimatum, is kind of one of the best and healthiest relationships that I honestly recommend you find. Whenever you find a relationship with the opposite gender with no intent whatsoever, like, it's one of the nicest things you can possibly have. It makes you really feel like you have, if you, like, for example, I don't have a sister, I feel like I have a couple sisters that I can really count on and know that they have my back, because I don't see them as anything else. I see them as saying, hey, they're my friends, and I want to take care of them as they're my sisters. And once you have that relationship, it really just kind of takes your, just your evolution as a person just a lot further, because you're not seeing people as things or goals or things like that. You're seeing them as human beings that have feelings that you want to basically interact and live upon, compared to just saying, hey, this person, they look good and they happen to be my friend. If I'm with them for, a couple more months, I feel like I can. Guys that do that, that's just pleasurable. Don't do that. I will say thank you guys for joining in. Again, I know this has been a little bit different podcast. It's my first podcast, so I do want to say thank you for joining in. My brother in the back is going to say bye here very soon. But we are going to be having our first interview here this Sunday. Now, this interview is going to have a lot of heated questions, so be ready for that. But it's going to get you at least into knowing of how are people really seeing the world? Because obviously I have one opinion. I'm just one person. I'm not the biggest person. I don't know everything. Nobody does. But getting a different view of everybody will really at least help you understand, okay, am I thinking the same way, or am I just the wrong one? Hey, I might be the crazy one, and I might be convoluted in a lot of different aspects. These interviews with different people will at least start getting you an idea of, hey, fun stories, friendships, and, let's get these files tacked away. Thank you guys for visiting. Just remember, subscribe and comment if you have any questions. And, thank you guys. Peace.